Right, so welcome back to our bulletin. Now, everybody has the right to change their mind, regardless of what they're changing their mind about. It's still a right, and it turns out many people like exercising this right. This week, Wilson Buru followed the actions of people who changed their minds willingly, others who had to be nudged to do it, and others who imagined kicks and blows would do the trick. All this in this week's edition of Mock the Week.
Wilson. Wilson. What? Oh, sorry, man. These World Cup times are taking a real toll on me. I'm watching England versus Italy and then Ivory Coast and Japan. Then I have to be up again to watch Bosnia and Argentina. Don't ask why. It's the World Cup, man.
The 24th week of the year. A pivotal week for the country because of this. Yes, a figure with so many zeros, it makes MPs' salaries look like pocket change. This is the amount of money in Kenya shillings, not Ugandan currency, the government said it was going to use or not to use in the next 1 year. But we'll get to that in a bit. There's a common saying that if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. Let's go back a few weeks when President Uhuru Kenyatta kind of got himself into the kitchen and pretty close to enough to the fire. That offer was snapped up by interested parties.
And I want to promise Kenyans, ikiwa Mheshimiwa Uhuru ataendelea na hii upusi, anaenda na Kalonzo wapige simu waje kwa chai State House. Unaona mimi mtu akwenda kwa chai.
But the beauty of this country is there's an allocation in the constitution that grants one the freedom to change your mind.
Hakuna haja ya kutusi viongozi wenzako kwa sababu wananchi hawa hawezi kukula hiyo matusi.
If you have been following the story of these two, it's very intriguing. But let's summarize it, shall we? This one said they should talk, this one said fine, but his family came in and said there'll be no talking, so this one agreed to that, and that was that. What they didn't know is that Baba was not changing his mind anytime soon.
Kongamano ni lazima. Wapende wasipende.
Now, all this back and forth is bound to take a toll on a man's body. That's why it's always important to have a helper around. And after taking a long, well-deserved nap, the shouting match continued.
Kiona kama jirani yako nanyolewa na wewe mshiko yaanza kutia maji.
You will not threaten this government. You will not threaten the president. You will not threaten the Jubilee coalition.
Meanwhile, is that very important argument which will most certainly 100% affect how much food you're able to put on your table tonight continued, somebody else was being a very bad boy. This guy. You see, his family was not very happy that he was very busy talking excommunication of one of their sisters.
The Jubilee coalition as a family have urged the Honorable Linturi to drop that motion.
It turns out, in the same constitution, right next to the freedom to change your mind, there is the freedom not to change your mind.
Wamesema wao wako tayari kusonga mbele.
Yup, he exercised that freedom fully. Until D-Day, that is.
If Honorable Linturi is not here, then I think his motion is dead.
Speaking of which, this lot in Isiolo County decided the good old days of councillors hurling chairs at each other were exactly that. Good. Alright, let's pause this thing right there. Let me explain. They were dead set on impeaching their speaker, but somebody came up with the idea that was seen as being likely to suggest that they should probably somehow, in maybe a very small way, change their mind. Let's just say that did not go down well with everyone. There's another very popular saying. You can dress up a goat in a suit, but it's still a goat. This may be the reason why the government wants to build more prisons. And speaking of prisons and prisoners, this fellow decided to imprison himself to his grandfather. In his defense, he was fully utilizing the clause in the constitution that gives one the freedom to climb on top of their grandfather's monuments in the middle of major cities. Problem was, the only guy who could get him to calm down was busy being a local tourist. So, they bothered his grandmother for God's sake, to to come and beg him to calm down.
I fail to understand why everybody created such a big fuss about our friend there when all he wanted to do is spend some time with his grandfather. The police admitted that, he did not do anything wrong, so he was not exactly under arrest. But I did pose that question to the police, why the fuss? And as usual, I got an exclusive statement sent to me personally, and they explained that he was holding the nozzle to his grandfather's gun, and they were afraid that if it had gone off, quote, he would have been seriously and or fatally injured, end quote.
It is a figure that made the government change its mind about several things. For instance, last year our friend Mr. Rotich here used an iPad to tell us how the government would tax us through our noses. But when you're faced with this, even an iPad becomes unaffordable and hence surplus to requirements.